So here we are, the final stretch before the big vote, and all the political parties are busy courting every special interest group in the country, no matter how small. If you've got one leg, two kids, you work on a farm, the parties, they have a pitch for you. Unless, of course, you happen to be a student, in which case you're completely off the radar. Not a peep from any of the leaders. Education wasn't even mentioned in the debate. Now, I'm not saying that any politician would ever come out and say they don't care about the student vote. When they're pushed, they can all talk about educational reform and crushing debt until the cows come home. But at the 10-minute mark, they all do the same thing. They stop. They lean in like they're telling you some sort of secret, and they say, you know, it's a real shame, but students in this country, they just don't vote. Which, believe me, is code for, we don't care about students, we never have, we never will. Now, this is a perfect example of where young people can learn from their elders. And by elders, I mean the elderly, as in senior citizens, because believe me, those folks, they vote. Which is why the old age home is the natural habitat for any campaigning politician. No exaggeration. In the 30 days since this campaign began, John Beard has spent 26 of them in an old age home. Okay, slight exaggeration. Now, I'm not saying, students, that students themselves aren't important to politicians. Oh, they are. After all, you're the ones that deliver the lawn signs. But past that, you could be on fire for all they care. So my advice to any university student, never mind your civic responsibility. Seeing as you're such a low priority in this country, you should show up and vote out of spite, if for no other reason. And believe me, there are 1 million students in this country. You show up and vote, elections, they'll never be the same again. Education will never be left off the agenda. And for all of you students out there who are living away from home for the first time, ignore all those Elections Canada ads that make it seem like you need quantum physics to vote. In this country, you do not need to be registered in advance to vote. Men died on the beaches so you could vote. All you need to do is show up with some official-looking mail with your address on it, your student card, and your ID. Don't take no for an answer, and democracy is yours. And not your fake ID either, your real one. So in the midst of all the gloom and doom on the economic front, some news this week that shows us some things just never change. The Canadian press reports that the Conservatives are getting ready to launch attack ads against Michael Ignatieff. So, as one insider said, they can poison his well. And so the Liberals say in response, they'll launch their own ads. Well, this is great news, isn't it? This is like peace on earth has broken out. That is, if your idea of peace is running around and putting poison in a person's well. So this is the state of Canadian politics right now. Every time we turn around, another 1,000 people are thrown out of work. And what's the government of the day doing? Scouring hundreds of hours of videotape, hoping Michael Ignatieff said something weird back in the 80s when he was a late-night talk show host on the BBC. Because apparently, the next election, never mind the economy, it's going to be defined by a 25-year-old clip of Iggy interviewing the cast of Monty Python. And how did we get here? Well, it's our own fault, apparently, because if you talk to any political strategist, they will tell you attack ads work. Sure, Canadians don't like them. Sure, it means that smart people won't go into politics, but it doesn't matter to them because it works. Well, you know what? Who cares? If there's a cat stuck up in a tree and you want to get the cat down, shooting the cat works too. But that doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. The only upside here is that, unlike fixing the economy, getting rid of attack ads is simple. It won't even take billions of dollars. All it takes is 3 men. 3 men who run 3 political parties to agree and say, fine, from here on in, no more attack ads. The buck stops with them. Because ultimately, guys, we're all drinking from the same well. It's been a very long time since I've been in school. And like a lot of Canadians, I see a yellow bus, I breathe into a paper bag, and then I carry on with my day. But this past week, I went back to school, and why not? 47 schools from across Canada came together and raised $250,000 for kids on the other side of the planet. And I know it was a contest. Who can raise the most money? But let's face it, no matter where you go to school, there's always going to be a school that's bigger, nicer, richer, whatever. The kids know this, and yet they still went to work and raised all that money. Really? What is wrong with kids today? From where I'm standing, not much. And how about the kids at PCVS in Peterborough? What a school. Great sports, great science, they got arts up the yazoo. They have an anti-bullying hotline that hasn't been called in 11 months. And still, this year, they were told out of the blue their school was closing. You know, In these situations, you have two options. You can do what you're told, or you can fight like hell. These kids, they went with the latter, and boy, what a beautiful sight. They fought, they marched, they made the lives of the school board a living hell, and they still went out and raised 50 grand for kids in Africa. These kids may not be able to vote, but they could teach us all a thing or two about being engaged citizens. In fact, if I could replace the entire federal cabinet with 39 kids from PCVS, I would do it in a heartbeat. I take that back. I would replace them with 25 kids. Harper's cabinet's too big as it is. The president of the Student Council at PCVS has said they're going to keep fighting because Canada needs more schools like theirs, not one less. I tend to agree. I'm just glad they lasted as long as they did. We're all better off because of it. One of the advantages of a majority government is they can pretty much do whatever they want. Now, how we ended up with a strong, stable majority government with just 39% of the popular vote, that's just a fun fact of Canadian democracy. But with voter turnouts at historic lows, everyone realizes that our democratic process, it needs some tinkering, which is why the government has introduced the Fair Elections Act. Ironic title because in a clever move, they have decided the way to deal with low voter turnout is to make voting more difficult. Gotta hand it to them, did not see that coming. How is it possible in 2014, in a bill that deals with how we can vote, was there absolutely no discussion of online voting? And I know online voting makes a lot of Canadians very nervous. I'm one of them. I'm old-fashioned. I like the notion of lining up in a church basement, getting a little stubby pencil and marking an X. And do you know what that makes me? A dinosaur, because while I may not like the idea of online voting, I know who will love the idea. Young Canadians. They are some of the most wired people on the planet. They go to school online. They work online. Heck, they find husbands and wives online. There are literally millions of young Canadians who have never walked across the room to an attractive person and tried to score a phone number, because there's an app for that. If the biological imperative won't get them out of the house, I don't know how voting is going to do it. The government has a responsibility to make voting available wherever Canadians live. And yes, all Canadians reside in a riding, but young Canadians, they live online. If we let them pay taxes there, let them vote there.